Today on Business Monday, so for a lot of us that's trying to repatriate to Africa and in general, and particularly South Africa, like, I just want to give you guys a heads up where we at with the conversion rate. So, as of today, July, as of right now, the conversion rate is $1 equals 17 Rand and 8 cents. Now, typically, it had been ranging before, after the pandemic in 2020, around about 14-ish, 15-ish, or 15 and some change, almost 16, since the pandemic of 2020. Now, in 2020, it was doing like this, and 18, between 7 and 18, was doing pretty well, during 2020 in the pandemic. Now, after the 2020, like 2021, middle to end, I think it was hanging around, 15, 16, and 14-ish to 15-ish to 16. It was kind of those ballpark range. So, as of right now, it officially hit 17.8 in rands when it's back to the dollar. So, quick numbers for those of us who are trying to figure out how far a dollar can go. So if you have $1,000 US, as you see here, $1,000 equal to $17,076.40 in the actual ZAR. And ZAR is the South African Rand, by the way. So $1,000 USD is equal to $17,076.40 of the South African Rand. $17,076. It ain't even got the 40 cents. Let me throw the 40 cents in there. So this is a big difference. $1,000 USD dollars. And you can just, man, listen. You can go a long way. You can go a long way. You can definitely get luxury a lot cheaper there. And look at these conversion rates. It's insane. So 2,000 USD to, now you're looking at $34,152.80 in rands. 5,000 USD is equal to 85,382 rand. 85,382 rands is 5,000 USD. So that's almost 100,000 rand. You know what I mean? That's almost 100,000 rand. So, and then 10,000 USD dollars is equal to, oh my God, look at these numbers. 170,764 rands. I'm sorry. So, 10,000 of the USD dollars, it would equal to 170. I'm down here, guys. 170,764 rand. That can go a hell of a lot way in South Africa. Now, sometimes I think there's two parts to this equation when I try to teach people in business expat. And I focus on business expat because everything I do is related to my business, and then I do a little lifestyle and I do a little family because those are all incorporated into me, right? So, when we look at business, we look at economics of everything, how everything functions, understand everything. So we look for profit ratio. We look for, you're gonna have some losses. We want to minimize those losses, right? And we look at the risk factors involved in those equations. So with that being said, you can have a cheaper exchange rate, but if you go to that country and the cheaper exchange rate doesn't equal out to necessarily a cheaper price as predicted, then those are the variables that we're dealing with. So cheaper exchange rate, and then you got to deal with the variable. The common variable when I'm talking in forms of business expat formula is that the variable is how much is the cost of living in that country. It can be cheaper in exchange rate, but if you go to some countries and they take they say we'll take CDs, or we'll take you got the oh my God the naira, or you got in Kenya, I forgot. The shillings is what it is. The shillings, and you take those numbers, and let's say in Kenya, you take the dollar and you take the shillings, and you're like, oh, the big exchange is the big exchange in that. Ooh, but then you go buy a house or go buy things in there, and there it would be in America. Let's say something round about easy number $2,000. Okay, then you go there. This item is costing actually, because it's something that they have to import in, it's going to cost you maybe $2,500. Now, some things in certain countries will cost more than in America, and then some things in certain countries will cost less. So food might be less, housing might be more, things that go in the house such as furniture could be more, technology in certain countries could be more. So if you're talking about a washer and dryer, refrigerator, I mean, you can go to, or even TVs, you can go to your Walmart, et cetera, that you want from $100, $200. You know, I think you can even, in some parts of it, can get like a $300 50-inch TV, right? And it'll be a smart TV. You go there, they're gonna want maybe 1,000 or 800. You get me, or something like that. In terms of U.S. dollars, so yes, they might be cheaper on the conversion rate, but they would charge more in shillings. Let's say, I'm just gonna throw the numbers because I'm not looking at the conversion of shillings, and I don't feel like typing it in right now. And let's say, well, hell, let's do it. Why not? Let's change it to shillings. Come on. We're gonna. I was gonna back off because this is supposed to be something simple. And sometimes I might have to go to my conversion calculator to do this. There you go. Where you go? I just saw it. I was going like, there you go, Kenyan shillings. All right. So like $1 in USD is equal to $118 dollars and 55 cents in Kenyan shillings. Okay. So now I'm going to type in, let's say, $1,000. You know what I mean? So $1,000 is equal to 11,000. No, I'm sorry, $118,550 in Kenyan shillings. Okay, so I'm over here multitasking. You guys have to work with me. So I did the conversion here, and then up here is telling you $1 is equal to 118.55 cents Kenyan shillings. So you'll look at this and say, wow, I can go to Kenya and take $1 and they will give me 118 of their dollars and 55 cents. I'll get more of their dollars in Kenya than I would do in South Africa. South Africa is going to give me only 17 of their dollars to $1. In Kenya, I'm going to get 118 of their dollars to the dollar, right? Well, so why not tell people to go to Kenya? Well, you can go to Kenya. I'm not telling anybody not to go anywhere. I'm saying there's parts of the equation I want you to be prepared wherever you choose to go. That is one part of the equation. There is a variable that you're not factoring in. The variable that you're not factoring in is the cost of living in Kenya. Now, it might be cheap for a lot of things like food, etc., 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 but maybe getting appliances or furniture could be cheap. I'm saying it backwards. Maybe getting appliances and technology could cost way more than America. Or maybe certain homes could cost comparable to America. Maybe going there, you get a nice house. If you're like me, I come from the bottom to the top, so I like finer things. I work too hard to get to where I'm at, so it is what it is. I like what I like because I worked hard for it. I wasn't spoon-fed, so I come from the bottom to the top. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, you might say, I want to live in a nice home in this area. And let's say those homes in that area are costing maybe $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 for a 2 or 3 bedroom and such, right? Maybe, in that area. Now, if you look in the outskirts of the town or outskirts of the city, especially in the outskirts of Nairobi, maybe in the sun going towards the rural areas, you might get a better deal. But if you're trying to live in Nairobi on the other side of town, it can cost comparatively $800,000, $1,200. You start looking at those prices and saying, wow, I'm only saving $300 or $400 a month, or maybe $500, depending on what state you live in America. That's another variable. What are you comparing it to? So you could be saving $300, $400, $500 in some comparing to other states in America. If you compare it to New York, you could be saving $1,000 or $2,000. It depends on what state you're coming from, what city in that state you're coming from, because the cost of living in each state is dramatically different. California is dramatically different than Texas. Texas is dramatically different than New York. So there's these variables that you need to factor in where you're coming from, okay? And then the cost of living there for certain things could be higher. Food and all those stuff could be cheaper. Electronics could be higher. Furniture could be higher. Housing or apartments could be, depending on where you want to stay, and the type of lifestyle is also a variable. Because of that, that variable dictates on how much you're actually saving overall. So in Kenya, maybe in Nairobi, it will cost you X amount of more, or very comparable to U.S. prices. Because I've seen some homes that are very comparable to U.S. prices, maybe like not the U.S. prices in New York or the U.S. prices in California, but very comparable to the U.S. prices in Texas. So I've seen a lot of homes there. I'm like, wow, this is almost what we pay over here in Texas, and this is almost what we pay over here in another southern state, or etc. And then I look at some things, I'm like, this is almost what we pay over here in San Diego, etc., etc., and the list goes on. So it all depends on where you're coming from and where you're going. Conversion is only a fraction of the issue. Just because you get more of their dollars doesn't mean it's going to be just dirt cheap. And this is where people make the mistake. They will say, oh, I'm going to go there with X amount of plans and maybe less plans, or didn't really, calculate correctly, and say, I'll get all of these dollars of their money for my $1. I'm going to be filthy rich, and I'll be able to live a luxury lifestyle. And you go to this country and you realize the cost of living there for that house in that particular part of that city, which is the highly sought after part of the city, a luxury inn where they have all the, infrastructure intact to a certain degree of your liking, I would say. And then you go there, you go shopping for electronics like computers, laptops, and TV. Man, I'm paying more, or almost the same as I did in America for these TVs and stuff, man. Or in some cases, some things I've seen, you be like, wow, this was cheaper in America. We only pay $100 for this. They're charging me $200 for that. And it depends on the lifestyle you're choosing, okay? So you have to make sure that you're not just looking at conversion ratios and not factor in the variables. What are the variables? The variables is the cost of living in that country. Find out what the electronics cost. Find out what furniture costs. Find out how much the housing costs in the particular areas that you're going to want to acclimate to. And last but not least, you need to know yourself. If you don't go to the rule, if you're not going to be, that's not who you are. Okay? Find out what you like in yourself. And then when you go, you can properly plan for what you really want and actually be happy and not be, doing something or living somewhere and you have all these frustrations. And you're there and you're just putting on the front and then you're out. So, with that being said, just because you get more of their dollars versus the dollar ain't always meaning it's going to be dirt cheap. Let me say that one more again. It does not mean it's going to be dirt cheap. It does not mean that, oh, because I get more of their dollars to the dollar, it's going to be dirt cheaper than this country. Okay, same thing with Ghana. You got certain parts of Ghana that can be, especially in Accra, Airport Hills, etc., that are very comparable to U.S. dollars as far as in what things cost. Yeah, they have the CDs, but if you convert them CDs, okay, of what they charging in CDs back to dollars, I find that a lot of the areas that are highly sought after, that a lot of us would like to acclimate to, and you can do other areas outside of Accra, but some of us like certain taste buds, and I'm talking to you guys, okay? You know who you are, okay? You like certain infrastructure, like certain taste buds. You like certain, you don't work your tail off to a certain part of life, and this is what you want, okay? You came from the bottom and top, and you like, no, I gotta live with the best. That's how you are, and it's the best everywhere. But everybody's best is not the same definition, okay? So you want to go to a place like Accra. you don't want to do the outskirts. You want to live in Accra, Hills. You want looking at the CDs. You take those CDs. You're like, wow, let's do CDs just so I can. There we go. So let me take this back down. So $1 is equal to 8 Ghanaian cedis, which is doing pretty well against the dollar. It's doing very well against the dollar. So that's doing very well against the dollar. $8.14 in Ghanaian cedis versus $1 United States dollar. So first of all, you're getting less in South Africa and then less than Kenya. They're doing extremely well against the dollar. They're, $8 equal one. I mean, 8 of their CDs equal $1. So that's very well. So anyways, so you want to go to a place like Accra. First of all, now you see how the factor changes even more. First of all, you have the conversion rate is only 8 of their CDs will equal $1. So you're already starting out with less of their dollars, okay, to begin with. You know what I mean? So that's now you see how the equation's going to change even more. Then you go there to an area that you really want to acclimate to because you have your taste buds and that's just what you want. It is what it is. You going into Accra and those areas in Accra, and you're going into those highly sought out areas like Airport Hills and et cetera, et cetera. You going into those areas. I can name names after names. And you start looking at these homes, and then when you convert it to USD, you realize those homes are costing $400,000. And then you look at that home, you say, well, let's say you come up out of Texas, because everybody likes to use Texas. So let's use Texas. And you come up out of Texas, and let's say Houston. And you look down in Houston, you're like, damn, I can get for $400,000. You can get a wealthy, 5, 6, 7, 8 bedroom house, in a nice neighborhood, so to speak. And move back, Winnie. It's my dog. And so you start to look and say, wow, and this house looks a little bit more luxury than that house, for $400,000. Wow. And it's actually small. So then you start to feel like you're paying New York prices, because you're trying to live in that part of Accra versus you start to feel that way because, people from Texas kind of feel that way when they started, paying $400,000 for a house that's very, very small to them. Now, somebody from another state might not see no problem with it. Somebody from the north or the northwest or the northeast or et cetera, or people from Cali and New York, the southern, not southern, but the east coast and the northern coast would be like, well, it's cool. I'm still doing better than what I'm doing here. So everybody's look at things is going to be different. But you need to know the conversion rate and you need to know the cost of living. Okay, now you get there and you say, man, getting electronics is a hand. TVs, furniture, money costs a lot. You convert that to dollars, man, it's a lot of money. That's because you're going into some of the shops more expensive. They do have places there where people hand make things and it's kind of affordable. That's going to be a variable. Or you going into shops or you getting it handmade, or you going to go find some stuff, people who do things on the outskirts of the city. Those are factors. So conversion rate is one thing. It's something to be proud of, okay? But cost of living is another. And when you factor in cost of living, you need not just look at food, but look at cost of the house that you, in the area that you want to go to. The things that go in the house, electronics, refrigerators, ovens, whatever, case scenario, TVs, laptops, whatever you need. Those things can vary in price per country. And then sometimes when you think something's dirt cheap, when you do the equation properly, you find out that, well, it's cheap, but it ain't that cheap. I still need to become prepared. Come prepared. People say, okay, then why South Africa? Because then there's other countries you get more dollars of their money to the United States dollar. It's because for me, for what I like, now everybody might not be the same. What you can do is what you do. What you do is what you do. For me, I want to live in a certain type of environment, in a certain type of structure. Just because of my needs. Not just wants, but my needs. So for me, I live over here in the estates and etc. in America, so I'm looking for that type of vibe. Okay, now would I find everything I want? No. So I'm willing to compromise on a lot of things, but then there are certain things I need for per sake of my son and my mother, who have different health conditions, right? So, I can tolerate a lot, to be honest with you, but I know that I don't want to make anything, the situation I'm dealing with, even more to deal with, or not just uncomfortable, but more straining. So for me, in South Africa, the housing for what you get, the development of the housing for what you get is cheaper than America, even in Texas. Because I said we use Texas for a lot of this too, just because Texas is cheap, right? Everybody knows that compared to other states. So if I want to say something cheap, I want to use Texas. If I want to say something high, I want to use California or New York. So compared to Texas, the amount of space in that house over the cost of the house equals my comfortability and what I wanted to pay. How about that? So the space of the house, the infrastructure of the house, the design of the house, the community, the estates there, and the cost of the house is like Texas, in some cases, cheaper than Texas. And then when I look at the inside of the house, the design, the architect, the technology that's put into the house is hand over fist cheaper than Texas. And to me, the technology in that house, when I look at places like California, places like Chicago, so places like, New York, et cetera, is to me a lot better. In some places, in some cases, it's a little bit more advanced than what you would get at that dollar value. How about that? So I would pay cheaper for more technology and better and more upgrades, right? I would pay cheaper for a little bit bigger house in a community that's going to offer me a little bit more, especially the gated communities, estates, etc. And then when I look at the cost of living, the food and et cetera, is also very reasonable, if not cheap as well. Then I look at the electronics, from computers to TVs, etc. It's also, for me to run a business like I do here in America, what we do one there, is also cheaper and affordable for the things I need to buy for my mom, my son, et cetera. And they have it if they don't, majority of the times, make it themselves or have the manufacturer companies there, which just makes it cheaper. So when I'm looking at everything across the board. I will say 85% of the things that I'm looking at are cheaper. Now, granted, there are a few things here and there that might be similar to what we pay in America, or just similar to what we pay in America. For the most part, overall, everything that needs to survive and adjust is cheaper. Not just being cheaper in conversion rate or just cheaper in food, but also cheaper in the type of house and the type of area that I want to go to, which is going to be some of the most sought out areas. You get me? So that's how I look at my transition. And that's how I compare who's actually cheaper, by looking at not just some of the factors, but the variables too. Okay? And they change from country to country. So sometimes less is more when you look at conversion rate, if the overall cost of living is cheaper. And what are the costs of living? Housing, food, electronics, things that you need to go in the house as far as furniture, refrigerator, ovens, technology. What's offered? Is it an upgrade? Is it about the same? What are you comfortable living in? What is your target area? Are you going to the highest sought off areas? Then you need to plan accordingly. But if you can just, if you could, that person to listen, I'm good with X, Y, Z. I don't need X, Y, Z, and you know that about yourself. You don't have to go to the highest sought off areas. You can adjust pretty well in eating one of those countries. But again, a lot of times people need to understand the culture does differ from country to country. And then, so now your factor would be like, what are the culture there? What are you accustomed to doing? Are you good at negotiating? Because you got to do a lot of negotiating, because some things are not set in stone to where you can just walk in and buy it and they don't change it because of your accent. Do you want to? That's part of the culture. Okay. That's part of the lifestyle there. So, are you willing to do that on every little thing? Or are you going to be comfortable with that frustrate you over long? My thing is, I want peace. I want to know what I'm dealing with. I don't like a lot of surprises. So that's another part of the equation. That's a variable that changes from country to country. So that's why I said what I said. But today I wanted to let you guys know the business expats who are coming to South Africa. We're going to go back to the ZAR or the Rand, the South African Rand. I feel like we got like 3 names for the same currency. Where you go? There we go. I have to get through it twice. There we go. So today, child, did it change again? Up. Just in the last, 10, 15 minutes I've been talking to you guys, it has changed because I know I'm not tripping. It was 17.8. 17.08. And now the dollar is worth 17.11. So just in the last few minutes, it has changed a few cents. So, which is good because the houses are priced very well for someone who wants to live in a nice area who's like, listen, I work too hard to get to where I'm at, and I want to kind of maintain a little bit of that same stigma. And in South Africa, very well they do because it's almost everywhere for the most part. It's states all over the place. There's abundance of states if that's what you want to do. If you live on the outskirts, you can live in a rural area. Either way you go, it's overall, to me, 85%, including electronics, including, computers, furniture, food, including all. You have to factor in all that. So when you factor in all of that, then you know what your outcome really is going to be. Your real affordability will be. So right now, for me, compare all the different departments that go into expatting and doing a business, it was, to me, 85% cheaper. And I just wanted to give you guys an update on the exchange rate so that you know it's about that time, dog, to start moving that money. But you might want to hold off a little bit because you see how fast it changed from 17.08 to 17.11. It could hit 18 in another few weeks to a month or so. Who knows? We might get lucky and hit 19. I don't know. But you can choose to make some changes, or you can choose to, wait and see if it goes up even more to maximize your bucks. You know what I mean? And with these things is, if they go up to a part where you're comfortable at, let's say some of you guys might say, listen, I'm going to take this 17, I might wait a week or two and see if it goes up a little bit more, and I'm going to take it from there. I'm going to move my money over then. Some of you guys might say, I'm going to wait a few weeks or a month and see what's going to go, or maybe another 2 months or so. And you might say, I'm going to hold off because we could be at 18 or 18 something, 19 or even greater. And you might move your money there and, make a good profit. To each his own. You find where you're comfortable getting your maximum at, you're doing great. I don't think you're going to lose either way at this rate or even down the line. But I know how we are. We want to get the best of the best at the best rate. So it's up to you and what you're comfortable in when you want to move it. And if you have to move it, do what you got to do, okay? But I'm saying at this rate, and what I'm expecting is that towards the next coming months, especially as the inflation and recession glooms in America, it impacts everybody's exchange rate. Some for the better and some for the worse. Now in South Africa, it could be impacting the South African rand to dollar in a situation where you will gain more, because even though the recession and inflation in America could impact the South African rand to where it increases in the amount it changes to the dollar. So it can continue to go up from 17 to 18 to 19 to the US dollar. But keep in mind, the exchange rate does not last forever. So don't be no slowpoke. If you're going to do what you're going to do, if you're going to move your money around today, tomorrow, next couple of weeks, next 2-3 months or so, do it, because it don't last forever. And it don't last long unless the recession is hit in America and it lasts a long time. So, yeah, so those things to watch. You watch the American recession, inflation kind of tells you the projection of where the conversion rate would be between the South African rand and the dollar. If it continues to get worse in inflation and recession in America, then you can kind of figure out where your rand is going to be, and you can kind of project, you know, maybe the next 2-3 months it could increase. So, but this is chess and not checkers. So, on that part, I hope I gave you guys some insight on properly expating and why the conversion rate, and looking at conversion rate and seeing it literally change right now, to knowing, okay, how to counteract your dollars when expating as a business owner to Africa, in particular South Africa. So, this might be just $17 in their currency, but that can go a long way in South Africa, a long way. So less is more. Well, not less is more. Y'all get what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say, those with a higher conversion rate, where you're getting 100 of their dollars to $1 USD, doesn't mean that you're going to walk in their country and everything's dirt cheap because you're looking like, oh, da, da, da. No, actually, you can look at a country like South Africa and say, oh, I'm only getting 17 of their dollars to $1. But when I go in their country, this is cheaper than this country who's giving me 100 of their dollars to $1. So everything depends on the cost of living, and you really have to factor that in too. I don't like seeing people in business expat who just tell you about conversion rates, and when you speak to other people, you excite them by saying, oh, you get 100 of their dollars to $1. And then in your mind, you think, I'm just going to walk in there and pay pennies on everything. And I'm like, no, tell people the whole equation. Tell people the whole, otherwise you set them for failure. So, good news, you guys. We are trending very well from the US dollar to rand. Other than that, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them below. Like, share, follow, hit that subscribe bell. And do subscribe to my channel so you can get all the alerts. Because as time go on, I will be dropping more jewels for the ear and for your prosperity track. See ya.